Hare Krishna. That the world is a miserable place doesn't mean we have to be miserable. One of the oft quoted verses from the Bhagavad Gita refers to how this world is a place of misery. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. This world is temporary, ashashvata, and dukkhalaya. It is an abode of misery. And yet, the same Bhagavad Gita is spoken to relieve Arjuna of great misery. Right at the start of the Gita, because of a wrenching ethical and emotional crisis, Arjuna is overwhelmed by grief. Ashru purna kulekshanam vishidantamidam vakyam uvacha madhusudana. So it is described in 2.1 that tam tatha krupaya vishtam, that because of great because of my weakness, his eyes were filled with tears and he was in great misery. And the result of hearing the wisdom of the Gita was that Arjuna did become free from this nashto moha smritir labdha tat prasadan maya achyuta hitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. So he did say that actually I am now free from misery. So he did not specifically say that he says the sources of misery, which are confusion, doubt, disillusionment, they did go away. So we need to understand things in a proper perspective when it is said that this world is a place of misery. That this world is a place of misery is a given fact. But that doesn't mean that we all have to be miserable. Just as for example, if somebody goes to a hospital, the hospital is a place of misery. But the systems that are in place in the hospital are meant to minimize the misery, not perpetuate or rationalize the misery. So that means, yes, if somebody goes to the hospital with the unrealistic expectation that I'll enjoy life over here, then that person is sure to be frustrated. But if that person recognizes that, okay, when I'm in a hospital, there is going to be a certain amount of misery that will be there. So what do? I learn to endure it. But that does not mean that in a hospital, that person should become masochistic and inflict more misery on oneself than necessary. So what we need to do is, we need to recognize that we are beyond that there are systems in place, and if we take the proper treatment, even if this is not curative, at the very least this palliative, there is definitely minimization of misery that can be done. And in many cases, for many diseases, even the misery can be removed by proper treatment. So similarly, in this world, when we follow the principles of dharma, when we understand Shastra and live according to our true nature, we can indeed minimize misery. If we go into life with a negative mindset, this world is a miserable place, I want to expect misery, then it will be terrible. We will mislead ourselves. We will unnecessarily inflict suffering on ourselves. So yes, that this world is a place of misery means that when inevitably misery comes, we accept it, knowing that okay, this is the nature of the world. But to the extent we live according to principles of dharma, to the extent the misery can be minimized. Not just that bad things won't happen to us, but more importantly, to the extent we practice bhakti, to that extent, we will be able to connect with a higher reality, in fact the highest reality, Krishna, and we will experience higher spiritual happiness in relationship with Krishna, by which we will no longer be overwhelmed by petty worldly indulgences. In this way, we can actually go beyond the clutches of misery, in the sense that we will not be subjected to misery unnecessarily, disproportionately or unmanageably. Rather, by preserving our Krishna connection, whatever misery will come, we will have an inner source of satisfaction, inner shelter that will enable us to cope with misery. And this indeed is what Krishna promises in the Bhagavad Gita when he says, Macchitta sarva durgani mat prasadat tarishyasi. He says in 18.58 that whatever obstacles come in your life, you'll be able to cross over them by my grace. So Krishna's grace is the essential message of the Gita. And to the extent we take shelter of that grace by practicing dharma, to that extent we go beyond the miseries of life. Thank you. Hare Krishna.